Lately, I've accepted a few smaller jobs just to keep busy. I found if I was alone with my thoughts for too long, I didn't like the outcome. Mostly, I was worried about what would happen now that August was free. Breaking a collar was no easy feat. We made a basic report, but expected something drastic to come of our actions. My cell phone rang, and I debated on not answering when I saw Lupa's name. He always brought some sort of stress. Instead of putting it off, I listened to what he wanted. It was just a basic job of some missing hikers in a forest. Since I wasn't busy, Lupa asked if I could investigate the cause. I didn't need to solve the problem, just report back if it was supernatural or not. He mentioned an agent would be joining me. This either meant that this job would be much harder than he let on, or there was something else he wasn't telling me. His tone made it very clear I couldn't refuse. I borrowed a pair of sturdy boots and put on a jacket that hadn't been shredded to pieces yet. Before I left, I flexed my new hand a couple times, testing it out. I wasn't sure how useful it would be. Focusing on gathering enough magic from my surroundings to make it transform into a claw, while being alert to the threats around me, was like juggling 6 apples on a unicycle. It would take a heck of a lot of practice. I met the agent outside of a large forest. I was hit by a breeze so warm, I needed to take off my jacket. The trees were covered with deep green leaves that gently swayed. I've rarely come across a place so dense with plant life before. I didn't need special eyesight to understand the reason why. A stream of magic ran through the ground, so close to the surface that it caused the forest to bloom all year round. Lupa had lied. There was no way normal humans would be allowed here. This place was teeming with supernatural life. It would be impossible to figure out what had caused the disappearances of whoever entered these woods. I'm Agent Finch. You're Richmond, correct? I seem to have forgotten your last name, the agent said, and slightly raised his head, almost in a mocking way. Don't worry about it. I brushed off the comment. He was tall and thin, with a perfect suit. Everything about him was sharp and crisp. Golden eyes intently studied my every move. I guessed Finch was almost as strong as Klaus, a type of agent that had earned the right to pick their assignments. So, why was he here? He noticed the gears working away in my head, and waited to see if I would ask questions about the current task. This place is too dense with magic. Normally the corporation seals forests like this away from the general public. And you seem like too big of a deal to come here. What's going on? I asked, refusing to continue unless I got answers. He gave a small, impressed whistle, crossing his arms behind his back. His tough guy mask dropped ever so slightly. I still had some reservations about Finch, but was ready to listen. I guess you're not as stupid as I heard you were, he commented, and I ignored it. Lupa would like to formally request for you to become an agent. He's not entirely certain if he should. He owed me a favor, so I offer to watch you on this job. I'll be a bystander. I'm not going to offer any assistance. Aside from having a conversation to pass the time, he shouldn't even consider I'm here. All of this being some sort of test explained a few things. I still wasn't certain if I wanted to follow through with this. If it was any other office supervisor, I would be more comfortable. Lupa simply didn't have the best reputation, and I didn't want to be on his radar. So you'll answer questions, but won't help fight any creatures, right? Finch nodded, and I could have sworn I heard a chirp from him. All right, let's get back to the job. Were the missing hikers a lie to get me here? I said, and gestured towards the dense forest. No. A small town of witches live nearby, and have been responsible for this forest for generations. They're aware of the dangers, but will still use the woods for resources and, yes, hiking. The fact they disappeared in a place they knew like the back of their hand is alarming. I crossed my arms and thought over the information for a few minutes. Witches are similar to hunter families. They're humans with supernatural powers that marry into other families with the same strengths. Unlike hunters, witches refuse to harm supernatural creatures unless their lives are threatened. Their traditions and lifestyles differ from family to family. For the most part, they're nature-loving free spirits who refuse to use their powers for violence. Because of that, hunters see them as being on the same side as monsters, and will sometimes wipe out entire families. Normally, it's not worth the effort, so massacres rarely happen. You want to walk and talk? Finch offered, holding his hand toward the start of the trail. You seem like a chatty person, I admitted to him. An oddly genuine smile showed on his face, and he agreed with that statement. We wouldn't solve what was happening in this forest if we stood around. I started down the trail, with the agent following behind. Since the magic that flowed through this place was so bright, my eyesight was useless. But I still looked around, trying to see any threats as we went deeper into the lush woods. What if I don't accept the offer of being an agent? I asked out loud, not really expecting an answer. You're getting a bit ahead of yourself. Lupa is considering it based on your skill set. Personally, I don't think you're suited for the job, Finch admitted, and shrugged when I gave him a narrow-eyed glare. He kept speaking. I think it would be best for you to accept the job. You're gonna die young anyway. Might as well take what you can get. Right now, your name is being dragged through the mud, simply because of rumors of you being from a hunter family. I paused at his words. Recently, I'd only picked up easy jobs I could do on my own, because nothing else had showed up in my inbox. It was possible I wasn't being sent jobs that required me to work with a second person because no one wanted to be around me. I'd lost the trust of people I needed to rely on to stay alive and get paid. If I became an agent, all those issues would go away. Has anyone been bad-talking Ito? I asked, feeling a heavy pit in my stomach. No, I see him as a victim. I frowned, but accepted that. This wouldn't help us ever get back together. It hurt to admit that it was better for him if I stayed away for a while. Aside from observing you on this job, I was sent to ask a question or two about August, since his collar was removed, Finch explained, causing my stomach to feel heavier. We already made our reports. What else do you want to know? I asked, refusing to look over my shoulder in case my expression gave my emotions away. Have you heard the rumor of how his village handled their dead? The agent asked, sounding closer than before. No? What do they do with them? Eat them? I asked, finally making eye contact with him and playing dumb. I was already a little stupid, so acting like it was easy. He studied my face for a moment and dropped the question. Never mind that. I also need to know your opinion on how dangerous August is, now that his collar is gone. Will he cause any issues in the future? Finch pressed on. I shook my head after a minute. The corporation knew August was strong, even if they hadn't confirmed the existence of the tomb in the mountain. If he wanted his revenge, he would have acted already. Unless he was waiting for something they didn't know about. I remembered that April still had her collar. They might be worried that was the only thing keeping him in line. Sweat started at the back of my neck, as stress set into my muscles. They didn't know what he had done to the aunt and uncle. Would they kill him for that? Try to put him under their thumb again? If I didn't answer carefully, August would be in danger. I dread what would happen to the first person who dumps Lucas. But overall, he'll behave. August just wants to live a peaceful life with his family. I hoped the truth would be enough. A long silence came between us. I could feel Finch's golden eyes staring a hole into the back of my head. I didn't like how tense this guy made me. I felt like I was walking on eggshells every time he spoke. That's what I feel as well. They were worried he might do something reckless after he buys April's contract, and the higher-ups are considering if it'd be safe to remove her collar in the future," he said with a sigh. We covered some ground and started to walk along a less maintained part of the trail. So far, I saw no signs of danger, just the normal wildlife living in the trees. I wanted to ask another question, but didn't know how to without it coming off as stupid. "Speaking of removing collars, the story we're spreading is that you were approved to buy August's contract. We're unsure of how you broke the collar. It's not impossible since you come from a family of hunters. But if it gets out that you're able to remove them, you'll get flooded with requests. Being the good boy you are, you'll be swayed by the saddle of stories. Try to help anyone who approaches you. It would only take one nasty supernatural creature to trick you into ending your life or this world." That made sense. Most people knew I was accepting as many jobs as possible to pay off a debt, but only a few had heard it was for a medical reason. Since I'd started working again so soon after meeting August, and we did so many jobs together, they would assume we became friends, and I worked hard to buy his contract. It all clicked, and yet I opened my mouth to ask a question I should know the answer to. How could I buy off his contract? I'm not a part of Evie's family or an agent. For once, Finch was silent. He stared at me as if I had said a joke he didn't understand. He even looked around as if he'd been set up to have his reaction recorded. "As long as it's approved through the corporation, anyone can buy out a contract of a collared supernatural creature," he said, as if I should know this already. I felt a slight blush start as I swiftly turned to keep moving down the pathway. I had hoped that Finch would drop this, but he didn't. "There's a black market for collared creatures. Not all of them are controlled by the Walker family or bound by the corporation. In fact, August bounced around between unregistered owners before he was bought by Evie. When he made the deal to bind himself and his sister, he ensured she would be placed under proper care, but forgot to include himself." I stopped walking for a second to take in the last part of what he said. August could have been forced to do anything before he was bought for proper contract work. I couldn't even imagine what he would have been forced to do. And yet, he never acted bitter over it. April had lived, so he never regretted his choices. I wondered if he understood how Lucas felt, because they had both been trafficked. I guess I never assumed the corporation would sell a creature or let go of a contract. They lack manpower, not money. Why give up what they need for something they don't? I said, trying to explain my thought process. "How do you think the money to buy out contracts is earned?" Finch pointed out. I mentally kicked myself for not realizing that. If anyone wanted to buy the freedom of a supernatural creature, then contract work would be the fastest way to do so. The corporation would still get some jobs done, if someone wanted to work to earn enough to remove a collar. How do they even decide the price of a contract? I assume stronger creatures are worth more? We had stopped walking, and Finch didn't seem to mind. He would rather chat than watch me struggle with a supernatural threat. "Yes, they are. Collared creatures do earn some money for the contract work they're given. They're given free housing and food, 10% of the earnings from a completed job. If someone's looking to buy a contract, the amount is calculated to be 10 years' worth of the creature's earnings. Stronger creatures can complete more difficult jobs, therefore they earn more, causing their contracts to be more expensive." He could have just agreed with me instead of going into so many details, and yet I pressed on for more. August is fairly strong. He's able to do higher-paying jobs than me. If the cover story for his missing collar is I bought out his contract, how could I have possibly earned that much? He didn't hesitate to answer, as if he'd expected this question. "The corporation will lower contract costs depending on circumstances. August was passed around, and that never should have happened. People might see that we lowered his price to be bought out as an apology for what he went through. Sometimes family members can buy each other out at a lowered cost. And other times, requests to buy a creature are refused. simply because it's too dangerous to let some of them gain their freedom. Overall, stronger creatures are worth more. However, it's mostly a case-by-case basis. It was likely that August had been working as hard as he did, not only to care for Lucas, but also to free his sister. Even if he earned enough, it would be possible that they would refuse the sale. I didn't think April was dangerous. If her collar was removed, she would still accept work. But she would just pick out jobs she wanted to do, instead of being forced to do boring ones. What's going to happen to August now? If he does a few more jobs and earns enough to live off of, is the corporation just going to accept that? My words were heavy, and held a lot of accusations. I assumed Finch would shy away, or give half-hearted answers. Instead, he waved a hand, as if trying to brush off my concerns. I'm not going to deny there aren't some agents that have been manipulated in some way to do this job. Lupa is guilty of doing that. Overall, though, we're agents because we want to be. You think Ito was forced into this? Sure, he didn't have a lot of options, but this was his choice, as well as mine. August is too strong to call her again. The damage he could do is not worth the risk if he doesn't want to be an agent. Unlike you. You're strong enough to be useful, but not strong enough to resist. I frowned at his answer. I had thought Finch was just here to watch me to decide if I was good enough to be an agent. From the sounds of things, he was already a sure thing. I think I need to get through this job first before you say those kinds of things, I said, letting my annoyance come through. Lupa's dead set on it, but he needs to convince a few other people before the offer gets signed off on. My word carries some weight. You should be nice to me if you want this all to go your way. He added the last part as a joke, which I played along with. Fine. You're very handsome. I sighed and turned away. When I didn't hear his footsteps following, I stopped to look over my shoulder. He'd never been complimented in such a straightforward way that it took him off guard. He was running his fingers through his sandy brown hair, fluffing it up and trying to fix it to calm himself down. When he realized I was staring at him, he hurried to catch up. We finally stopped talking to focus back on the reason why we were in these woods. The trail had become too overgrown to keep going. We needed to step off into the forest, walking between the dense bushes covering the ground, trying not to step over roots. This forest was much different than any others I'd been inside. Creatures of pure magic were out in the open, not afraid to be seen by human eyes. Most of them I'd only heard about. I felt a tug at my ear as I heard a slight buzzing sound. The creature was small and made up of leaves, and yet had a human-shaped body. It giggled, then quickly flew away. A few more came down to steal some of my hair or lint off of my shirt. This place was more like a fairy tale than a monster-infested forest. I nearly stepped on another small creature racing along the ground. It had the body of a spider, but a human torso. It reminded me of a mini honey, with pink pastel hair. It was super cute, and I wanted to pet it, but I feared my finger might squish the poor thing. I noticed Finch cover the back of his neck with his hand, just before another half-spider creature dropped down, trying to get to the base of his neck. The action appeared playful, but I knew better. I copied his actions, fearing the true reason why he protected that area. No matter how soft and fluffy a supernatural creature appeared, they could still be a threat. We carried on, going even deeper into the woods. At first, I thought my eyesight wouldn't be useful. The magic below us was too bright to look at for too long. But I did notice something. All these small creatures were heading towards a spot in the forest. I could see thousands of glittering lights from the creatures swarming. Fear spiked in my stomach, but I followed them. Soon, we found ourselves in front of a sign that reminded us how brutal these woods could be, no matter the beauty they held. A large tree reached out into the sky, blooming with all sorts of life. Countless creatures, large and small, darted around, not bothered by our arrival. At the base of the tree, we found what we were looking for. A woman was slumped against the ground, covered in plant life. No, it was growing out of her while she was still alive. Her body could no longer move, as the supernatural plants used her to bloom. Magic flowed through her to feed the plants as well as everything else that dropped by to take a bite. A lifeless eye peered through the softly glowing flowers, silently pleading for one thing. Since she was from a family of witches, her body had lasted longer than most. To become a battery, I couldn't even imagine the pain she was in, from constantly having magic flowing through her every cell. I hadn't eaten today, and yet I was nearly sick. As selfish as it was, fear prickled at the back of my neck, as I considered that this could so easily be my fate if I wasn't careful in these woods. My only weapon was a small knife tucked away in my back pocket. I felt the handle, filled with emotion over what I needed to do. "I'll take care of it," Finch said, breaking the silence. "This is my job. You're a bystander," I replied. His expression softened for the first time. "This job is to decide if you can become an agent. They work in pairs. Sometimes, you need to let your partner do the things you can't." My mouth became tight as I wanted to refuse him. I could easily take care of the poor woman in front of us. It was the best for her. And yet, that action would haunt me for the rest of my life. Finch was an agent. He wasn't human. This wasn't his first or last time doing such a thing. I let my hand drop and nodded. I couldn't watch him. I stepped away to look off into the deep greens of the leaves. A bird song that sounded like a lullaby came from the tree. Then a snapping sound. It would be too dangerous to take the woman's body with us. We needed to leave it here. Magic would still flow through her until she started to rot away. At least she wouldn't feel it now. How many more people were suffering in these woods? Finch joined me again, silent and not wanting to talk about what happened. We kept walking through the woods looking for more people. I feared it was far too late for anyone we might find. By the time the sun started to set, we only found one more body, long since dead and rotted away. I wanted to keep going, but was talked into taking a break. Finch complained he was thirsty, just trying to break the silence. I directed us toward the edge of a lake to take a rest. It was easy to find, if you knew how to look for a source of water in a thriving, magic-filled forest. He carefully took off his shoes and rolled up his pant legs to wade into the crystal-clear, cool water. I was tempted to make a birdbath joke, but kept it to myself. "I've heard of your eyesight, but I didn't think it was this good." I sat down on a large rock overlooking the agent, in case something tried to sneak up on us. Until recently, I never considered my skills to be anything special. I always assumed most supernatural creatures were stronger than me in every single way. And yet, I didn't think he was complimenting me. "You have a rare set of skills. I wonder what kind of creature your family line stole it from," he said, a tight smile across his face. A coldness washed over me. My movements felt too slow as I looked down at him. "What do you mean?" I asked, with some difficulty getting out the words. "What? Did you think humans just had supernatural abilities by chance?" he pressed, almost amused by my ignorance. "How else?" I started, but stopped when a terrible thought came to mind. "You know, an odd thing happens with half-breeds. If they're half-human and they're raised by humans, all their magic gets suppressed. If they're raised by creatures, it doesn't. And strangely enough, if you test a half-breed's DNA, only the human side shows. Magic sticks inside human bloodlines. Hunters will pick the best creatures to breed desired traits, to pass down until the features of the creature disappear, but the abilities stay. Witches aren't humans that just so happen to be good with magic. They're humans who had a supernatural great-grandparent. Simple as that. I had never considered such a thing, simply because I didn't want to face the terrible facts of what the hunters truly do to gain power. I'd always assumed they paired their families with others that had desirable traits by tradition or by force, but I never thought about why certain bloodlines held special powers. There were other worlds out there. Most weren't on the same timeline as each other. It was possible that hunters sent away the creature they wanted power from with some of their bloodline to one of those different worlds. A few years would pass by here. Meanwhile, over 100 would happen in the other world. They would come back with a human hunter, after generations of tweaking to create the perfect weapon, without too much time going by in their main world. In order to destroy monsters, they became even greater ones. Finch was right. My eyesight and all my abilities were stained with blood. It looks like this is all new to you. You're not very smart, are you? He commented, knowing he was right. I have a feeling you don't like me that much, I replied, glancing away to sulk. I didn't want to think about what sins had been committed so I could be born. I'd run away from that truth my entire life, and now the agent next to me was making me face the facts. He opened his jacket and unbuttoned his shirt enough to expose some of his pale chest, with a deep scar that disappeared behind his shirt. It looked to cover his entire torso. Finch rested his fingertips along the old wound, his eyes fixated on mine and refusing to look away. You look and sound like a Doherty. I've met one before. Back when I had a partner and before the scar. That hunter took nearly everything from me. A dear, sweet girl who just wanted to be an agent and help people. I still haven't recovered enough to do proper jobs. You cannot bring back what has been taken away. However, there are two things you can do to slightly pay back the harm your existence has caused. When he offered to take care of the woman in the woods, he wasn't considering my feelings. He just wanted to ensure she had a painless passing. The hatred he felt dripped from every word. I couldn't reply, only nodded for him to keep speaking. Do the world a favor. Give back the eyesight your kind stole from us supernatural creatures, and then remove yourself from this world. A sudden throbbing pain came from my bad leg, and my vision started to go gray around the edges. I placed my palm against my temple, trying to keep my breathing even. My mouth opened, ready to agree to Finch's demands before I even realized what I was going to say. I took a deep breath to gather myself. You're using a lot of words to tell me to kill myself. I wanted to sound angry, but I was simply too tired. A bright smile came to his face, and he buttoned his shirt back up, and then fixed his tie. Yeah, or just die, he chirped. Please? He added politely. No matter how many times I worked with agents, I was still impressed by them. Finch kept a straight face, chatting away while we walked through the woods, and had the same expression when he demanded I end my life. He was able to put his feelings aside to work with someone he hated with his entire being. Carefully, I climbed down from my perch and rolled up my sleeves. Finch walked out of the water to put his shoes back on, interested in what I was doing. You'll get your second wish at some point. Maybe soon, I said, with my back to him. I bent over to place my palms against the ground. I decided to put an end to this job. I couldn't properly feel the flow of magic through the right hand August gave me. That would put a strain on my left, but it was manageable. I needed to look very, very hard at the forest, and the natural flow for anything that didn't belong. If the local witches were disappearing, the threat must be new to the forest. The plants we found that overtook the two bodies appeared like they were native to the area, simply because they were feeding on the natural magic from here. I focused hard, looking at literally everything around us. I've never tried to look at so much at once before. The strain was immense. Air refused to fill my lungs, and yet I pressed on, glancing at every small flicker of magic, plant, insect, and small creature inside the forest. My ears rumbled until something popped, and I lost my hearing. Small drops of blood came from my nose, then more poured out. Looking at every speck should be impossible for most creatures, let alone a human. I have no idea how I carried on as long as I did. It might have only been 2 or 3 minutes until I saw what I was looking for. I closed my eyes, shutting off all my senses. Slowly, my hearing came back, with a ringing sound. Then a word from Finch asking what I had just done. I took a few deep breaths to push the pain and fear deep into the back of my mind, then rubbed away the blood from my face with the back of my sleeve. The plants we saw are a parasite. They use human bodies mixed with magic to lure in supernatural creatures, offering an easy meal. I saw thousands of smaller creatures infected with a slightly different colored magic, identical to the parasite plants. Once the infection blooms, this forest will be overtaken by it, I explained, and slowly got to my feet. My legs screamed in white-hot pain, but I refused to let it stop me. Finch appeared shocked by my words. He didn't think someone like me could figure out what was going on in the forest simply by looking. If it hadn't hurt as much as it did, I would have considered doing it sooner. Well, since you... Finch started, but I ignored him. I gathered energy to start running as fast as my body would let me. I wasn't able to control how much I took in each time. It caused me to, at random, jump through the forest, narrowly avoiding trees. It burned, but it was worth it. I needed to reach the bundle of magic I saw deep in the woods, before it spread further. Finch was close behind, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. The sun had set, but the light from the small, flying creatures was enough to see by. When I was straining my eyesight, I noticed a line of magic through the regular flow that had a slightly different color. Then another one. And then, when I started to look for them, I saw an entire root system, all leading back to a main, large parasite plant. I didn't know if killing the largest plant would destroy the roots, and thus kill the smaller ones, but I needed to try. The plant was massive. It was a closed flower wrapped with countless strong vines. I didn't have much of a plan. Only a small knife as a weapon, and Finch wouldn't be lending a hand to help until after I died. To make matters worse, there was a barrier of magic surrounding that closed bloom, meaning once we got close to it, it would alert the plant. Not to mention what other kinds of nasty things the thick air around it could do to us. I didn't think or pause running. The moment I came into contact with the barrier, I pushed out the gathered power from my new right hand, causing it to transform. The barrier was shattered, and the parasite wasn't happy about that. It let out a screech, and the vines lashed out. At the ends of each were small pods, slit open to show countless sharp teeth. They bit down at my clothing and exposed my skin. No matter how many I cut off, more appeared. To my horror, the deep red flower opened, revealing human shape in the middle, with so many shimmering blooms coming from their skin. A vine shot out, missing my face by an inch. I grabbed hold of it and realized it hadn't been aiming for me. Finch stood still, face calm, as vines started to wrap around his body. His suit would protect him, but not for long. Why did he even bother following me? He was meant to observe. He could have done that at a distance. His golden eyes landed on mine, his silent expression making his point clear. He could have left and let stronger agents deal with this problem. I rushed in without a plan, and it was going to get us both killed, He would gladly give up his life if that meant it made me suffer in my final moments. I quickly looked away, trying to figure out what to do. Fire would be ideal, and yet I had no way of creating one in time. No matter how much I fought to get closer to the main flower, the vines kept me away. From the looks of things, the body overtaken by plants was weak. One blow could kill it. But how could I get close enough? Another vine shot out, and I stood still to let the attack land. The small mouth clamped down on the side of my neck, a sharp needle jabbing deep into my throat. Heat ripped through my body, as something started to expand and grow through my veins under the skin. Colors burst over my vision, and my legs turned to jello. I wanted nothing more than to just stop and let the comforting, warm embrace of death take over. I found myself thinking that being one of the plants wouldn't be so bad. If I just closed my eyes and accepted things, it would be so much easier. And yet, I was scared. The face of the woman we failed to save flashed before my eyes. Her silent pleas to make it all end, and how that was now going to be my fate as well. Not just mine, but Finch as well. We would be used as food, unable to move, feeling indescribable pain after being lured in with promises of sweet dreams. I wasn't aware of what my body was doing until I heard the screams of the human infected with flowers. The knife was in my hand, and it had come down deep into their chest. It wasn't enough. I raised my right hand with the sharp, pointed claws to bring them down to the flesh again and again until the screams stopped. The infection was still spreading through my skin. The vines had gotten thicker and more painful. I wouldn't be able to claw them out without risking bleeding out. Instead, I forced my left palm against the spot and pumped magic into my skin, frying the veins before they took over. It hurt. A lot. I nearly passed out from it. Resting against a tree, I looked over what I had done. The flower creature had been a threat, and yet I felt sick seeing its mutilated body and dead vines all around it. No matter how much I said I wasn't like the hunters I came from, I was still afraid of myself and what I was becoming. The toll of the job was too much. I passed out on my feet, expecting to hit the ground hard and wake up with a headache. When I did open my eyes again, I was on my back outside the forest. It felt like I had slept for years. Oh, you're alive. Shame. I rolled over, groaning that Finch was still around. It took a few minutes to finally stand back up, and for him to tell me what happened while I was out. He got in contact with the witches and explained what we found. Since they couldn't see the connecting roots, they used a spell to locate the rest of the invasive plants. All the bodies of the missing hikers were recovered. It seemed as if killing off the main body also killed off any infection. I frowned, rubbing at my neck, realizing if I had waited a few minutes, the vines would have died off on their own. But then I would be stuck with dead plant matter under my skin. Since I burned them away, I was left with odd scars on the side of my neck that looked like cracks. To my displeasure, they had left me passed out all day at Finch's orders, or he just forgot to give me some medical care. I was ready to pack up and head home when a voice I knew called my name. I turned to see Klaus coming our way, appearing a little concerned, with a takeout bag of food. "Richmond, are you alright?" he asked, grimacing over how bad I looked. "I took very good care of him," Finch proudly chirped. "Shut your lying whore mouth, Aberline. There's a reason why you never had a partner. Everyone knows it," Klaus hissed back. These two did not like each other. At all. I looked between them, with questions forming. "Aberline?" I asked. "No partner?" He said he has a scar. I trailed off, realizing how easily I'd been played. He got that scar by getting wasted at an office karaoke party, and then walking to Ansayer's office to call him Daddy. Klaus sighed, reliving a traumatizing memory. The tall, thin agent appeared very proud of himself, without a hint of shame. Was anything you told me true? I pressed, very offended that he had lied about a dead partner for his gain. Finch, or Agent Aberline, wrapped an arm around my shoulder and affectionately pressed his cheek against mine before I pushed him away. My job was to see if you're a suitable agent. Certain people may dislike me, but my words still carry some weight. Based on what I saw, you have the raw, untrained abilities to do the job, or to be dangerous if you decide to be. He said, but shook his head. With all that being said, I don't think you're suited to be an agent. You're too trusting, have bouts of stupidity, along with less than zero self-worth. You risk your life against the threat instead of trying to work together. Agents work in pairs. What do you think would happen to your partner after you let yourself die for them? You should give me the name of your therapist so I can bitch at them for not doing their job properly. I took the verbal abuse, and then silently started to eat the food Klaus had brought along, ignoring the last statement. Aberline raised an eyebrow when he realized what my silence meant. Men really would rather die than talk about their feelings. I've been busy, I lied. Both of them glared at me so intensely that I thought my blood would freeze. First, call a doctor to look you over. Second, get another doctor to see what's mentally wrong with you, Klaus ordered. He could be scary when he wanted to be. I promised I would call Dr. Philo the moment I got home. I wasn't going to keep wasting time on a therapist, though. I just needed to take it easy, work-wise. I was glad I wasn't suitable to be an agent. I was fine just being a contract worker. I was still annoyed that Aberline lied to get a reaction from me. I was even confused about what to call him. It seems like he used a different name depending on what job he was doing. Before I left, he admitted he didn't care what name I called him if we ever met again. He also hoped we would never need to see each other. When I got back home, I had a few job offers waiting. But I also had a reminder from August that Lucas would be in a play tomorrow night. I sent a message back assuring him that I would be there. That was another reason why I couldn't be an agent. I simply couldn't give up normal moments with the people I cared about to save the world. Right now, enough agents were working, so I could take a day off. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.